In order for government to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, the politics has to get closer to the people. I'm John McCann, and this is the Closer to the People podcast, a production of North Carolina Black Alliance, an organization that has something to do with folks across this state voting in record numbers. Our first state record for in-person early voting with 353,166 ballots accepted across the state. That's just on day one, the first day of in-person early voting, according to preliminary numbers from the State Board of Elections. Now, my inquiring mind wants to know, what's got y'all so worked up? Bet I know it's the top of the ticket, ain't it? I know. It's all about who's going to be president of the United States. That's what it's all about, until it isn't.
You are going to see a police officer stop you for a traffic citation or stop the loved one because of racial profiling quicker than you'll see any presidential candidate. We are going to see more laws impacting working class people in North Carolina from our state legislature than we'll ever see from Congress. And a lot of times folks don't realize, while the national narrative and the national media is focused on two individual people, in regards to North Carolina in particular, when we think about the quality of our education. I grew up in a time where North Carolina was one of the best places to learn. Now I have a child that is coming up, entering into public school, where North Carolina is closer to the bottom in regards to how much they spend per student, in regards to how much they pay teachers, in regards to testing and scores. And I think we have to really notice that even those indicators of education rely solely on our state. A lot of people are worried about issues at the grocery store, not necessarily issues at the ballot box. When we think about North Carolina being one of the largest producers of agriculture in the nation, when we think about North Carolina being one of the largest hog producers, largest poultry producers, there are things right now in North Carolina that we can do to take the pain off of the everyday citizen if we push our politicians to do that. But in North Carolina, you know what's happened over the past several years. They have made it more appealing for North Carolina to be a place for businesses to come, and not mom and pop businesses. I want to be very clear on this. They're not making North Carolina more attractive for everyday small businesses and entrepreneurs. They're making it more attractive for multi-billion-dollar corporations by giving them tax breaks and incentives, by making sure that some of the regulations around environmental protections are eased for these companies to come in. And I'll say this too. In North Carolina, they have focused a lot on low-wage jobs in rural areas. A lot of folks wonder why in certain parts of the state they're not getting these tech jobs. That's all connected to education and the years of disparity in our education system. Far more important than what's going to happen in the White House over the next 4 years. What's going to happen in my own backyard by the people that I'll see every single day that I can control is on the ballot. From school board member to mayor to county commissioner to district attorney, all of these different races, in my mind, take precedent before we even talk about what's at the top of the ticket. And that's what we're talking to voters about at the doors in community every single day, making sure we're close enough to the people that we can connect them to the power on the ballot.
That was North Carolina Black Alliance Deputy Director Marcus Bass, and he might have just given somebody a reason to vote, because maybe you or someone you know were not in that record-breaking number for day one of in-person early voting. Maybe you're not even planning to vote because not even all of the drama at the top of the ticket is enough to make you want to go out and really do what's right. No, not you. You don't want to go out and exercise your right, a right that your ancestors They marched and they bled and they protested and they struggled and they toiled for your right to vote. And I'm saying it like that because that's what some people are hearing. And the guilt trip turns them off from getting engaged with the political process. Brother Marcus actually wrote about that. He and the Reverend Dr. Gregory Edwards, he's the interim director of Power Interfaith in Pennsylvania. Those two collaborated on a piece about the importance of properly and thoughtfully engaging with black men in particular to get them activated in a political system that can help them. It can help all of us if we can just give them a reason to participate.
Black communities are not monolithic. There are different backgrounds, there are different ideations about the path forward and our future. There are even different political persuasions in the black community. I think oftentimes when we land our political pursuits only in the party view of the black community, we oftentimes miss a wide segment of our very own people.
That piece by Brother Bass and Reverend Edwards is published in Newsweek. You can find it when you go to ncblackalliance.org/Newsweek. This is the Closer to the People podcast. Voting not only is our right, it's also our power. We're counting on you to encourage 3 friends and family members to vote before November 5th. Text them, call them, DM them, tag them, because more black voters means more black power. And no one has more power than us to protect our community. So encourage 3 friends and family members to vote today. Voting is exponential. Those who represent us are determined by those who show up, especially when we show up in numbers.
Look, man, let's keep it 100. You see my bank account, you see these bills. Whoever gets elected ain't doing nothing about none of that.
You say that like I got money. Look, we up in the sports bar. You saw what I just ordered. Listen, I feel what you're saying, but what about your kids?
What about them?
Always talking about what's happening at your daughter's school.
I don't play by my baby girl, you know that.
There are people running for school board who can do something about it. So stop all that complaining and vote for folks who will do right by your baby girl. And remember when those cops had your son jammed up on some nonsense?
Yeah, that had me shook. But that judge down there, you know, at the courthouse worked it out.
My dude, how you think the judge got up there? She got voted in by people like us. Well, people like me, because you don't vote.
I keep seeing all these ads about the presidential election. I don't even really think about school board races and voting for judges, the races that hit closer to home.
Exactly. So you're voting, right?
Alright, I get it. Yeah, I'm voting.
All that complaining. Sound like my wife.
Why you over here talking about me again?
My fault, baby. All right, let's get back to the lesson from North Carolina Black Alliance Deputy Director Marcus Bass, because increasingly, from now until Election Day, you're going to hear the term swing state and about North Carolina being one. Brother Bass here breaks down what that means, and he'll help you better understand those loved ones in your life who are cynical about voting and believe they have every right to be.
It's not just a nuance or happen circumstance that North Carolina is called a swing state. The states that are swing states, they have certain characteristics. One of the things that makes a state a swing state is the close to even numbers of Democrats and Republicans. Most folks may not know this about North Carolina, but our largest base of voters are unaffiliated voters. The second to that independent base are our Democratic base, and the third is the Republican base of voters. Now, when we look at the General Assembly, when we look at our courts, we don't see that same type of parity. We see Republicans in control in the General Assembly because they manipulated maps. We've seen the Supreme Court being largely controlled by Republicans because in a very real way, as you control the legislative maps, you're also able to control the entire process. And now in regards to North Carolina, just like across the nation, we are seeing individuals that are becoming more and more disconnected from the political process, not because they don't want to vote, but because of systemic racism and the issues of systemic racism doled out through legislation and democracy. In North Carolina, there are changes to the election every year. As a matter of fact, this year there's a new impediment called voter ID. On top of voter ID, they're now making it more difficult for individuals with formal felony convictions to vote. They're also upping the ante on what constitutes someone getting a felony conviction and connecting that directly to the elements of protest. Our young people have been in the streets over the past 10 years plus, fighting for our rights, fighting against police brutality, fighting against other systemic issues like gun violence. Now the General Assembly has figured out how to manipulate even our First Amendment right to make it to where if you express your First Amendment right to the degree in which the Constitution mandates, you may be charged with a felony in North Carolina. However, they're not being as strict on the things that are largely conservative. When you think about gun laws, it's now easier to purchase a gun than it is to actually vote in North Carolina. And so I think a lot of times we're conditioned to blame black people for their conditions. Voting is no different. We have to make sure we're looking at the process, the actual environment not just the individual voters who are impacted by that environment. Yes, some people are apathetic, but then some people are rightfully cynical in their approaches to democracy. Because democracy has been doled out differently for blacks as it has been for whites, the diminishing returns in our quality of life and the way we're educated and the way that we're waged in regards to jobs, that's different because of the political process. And over time, you get people that really see what's happening, and they're not motivated just by the, kind of magical nuances of the Democrats only work for you, or what do you got to lose in regards to Trump's statements 4 years ago. They really see the best answer is not the definition of insanity, but to back away from the process. But that only represents a small majority of the people that are denied the right to vote. By and large, where more individuals in North Carolina are being politically engaged, the reason why we're a swing state is because of the even match of Democrat versus Republican versus independent. There is about a 33 to 35% margin in all of those communities. And so when you have that type of closeness in regards to the percentages of registered voters, you're going to get a lot of volatility in regards to the election. It's not just going to swing in favor of one party every single year. And that unpredictability makes it a swing state, makes it a battleground state, because you actually have to campaign here, not necessarily just rest on being a Republican or Democrat. You have to really speak to the voters. You have to really engage. And even the polling indicators, when we think about national polls, some areas you can predict how the electorate is going to go based on previous performance. North Carolina has shown, especially over the past 4 election cycles, we went from historically nominating or electing a Democratic president, a Republican president, to now, since 2008, we've started electing Democrats to the White House. With the exception of Donald Trump, we have seen, at least in the past 2 or 3 cycles, North Carolina increase its share of voters that are voting for Democratic presidents, as opposed to at one time, it was pretty much Republican presidents. But at the same time, even though North Carolina voted for Republican presidents, we still had Democratic governors. For over 100 years, North Carolina has been largely controlled by Democratic governors, but at that same time, we're electing Republican presidents. Now, there's more to it than that, but I will say that that's just one example of how unpredictable North Carolina politics has historically been and why we're defined as a swing state.
Okay, deep breath in and out. Deep breath in and out. That was to clear our minds, to better absorb all that good knowledge from Brother Bass, and to gather ourselves for this final push until Election Day. Woo! This has been the Closer to the People podcast, a production of North Carolina Black Alliance. I want to stay close to you. Reach out and touch me at john@ncblackalliance.org and drop by ncblackalliance.org to stay plugged in on issues impacting you. Until next time, keep in mind, a government of, by, and for the people has to get closer to the people. The 2024 elections are here. You may be asking yourself, what's at stake? What's on the ballot? Well, very simple. Our community is at stake, and healthcare, education, economic, environmental, and housing justice are all on the ballot. So we're dependent on your vote.